Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and today I am interviewing Heather and Holly. And the topic of this interview is going to be the differences and similarities of the ESTJs. So Heather is the standard ESTJ, while Holly is the jumper ESTJ. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves first. So starting with Heather, so go for it.
Yeah, I'm the boring ESTJ. I get to be standard. Holly gets to be special. So I'm double masculine, TESI, blast, play, sleep, consume.
All right, and then Holly?
Yep, and I'm ESTJ jumper, so I'm visual, TENE, play, consume, sleep, blast.
All right, awesome. So let's go start with the most obvious differences between you guys. So Heather, you are lead organizer, and Holly, you are lead gatherer. All right. I'm going to start with Heather first. So can you just share a little bit about yourself being an organizer before a gatherer?
Yeah, I definitely, when I ever do, I try to be as efficient as possible and try to narrow things down as quickly as possible because it stresses me out when there's chaos, especially sensory chaos. And so like the first thing my brain starts doing is how can I put these things in order? It just stresses me out. So so if I'm running projects or something, I'm immediately trying to get it organized. I think for me, it's more like I just kind of want to be able to touch the edges of whatever it is. Like it just feels so big and ominous. And so it's like, okay, let me just see if I can touch the edges of this and see how many, what all's involved in this before I start organizing. So I actually zoom out a little bit first, but then it's like, okay, now I want to begin to narrow this down and get this in order. It's like a compulsion.
Got it.
Yeah.
But because you're a double observer, does this mean that if there is chaos, you don't necessarily freak out? Like you're still okay with it to an extent?
Yeah, there's sometimes a panic that comes up, but I guess I believe and know in my skill to be able to organize. So I guess I don't freak out in that sense. It's not like fear. It's more like, oh my gosh, I need to get this thing down and ordered. And, like recently, I've switched into private practice now. So there's all this stuff I've got to figure out, which is a lot. And being consumed last, I'm finding stuff that's kicking me in the butt constantly that I didn't think about. So, so it's just like, okay, I've got to get this organized. I got to get this organized because I just feel like, but I'm not saying I'm freaking out, but I definitely feel like I'm going to feel a lot better when I have my ducks in a row and I know how to have a set system, and then I can relax. So I just push really hard on things to get a system, and then like, okay, now I'm good and I can relax.
So it's more of a nuisance than something that would freak you out.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Holly, you're the opposite. So, you're you're chaotic. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's not extreme. I don't think I'm extremely chaotic because sensory chaos does stress me out to a degree. I do like to have things organized, but I guess my natural inclination is to go to new and the chaos first and then organizing. But yeah, I like new. I really struggle to narrow down and to actually build on something that's been like a problem in my life. An ongoing problem is just being able to actually build a skill or just build something over the long term, because I very quickly get bored and want to move on to something else. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Typical EP problems right there.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't we cover some of the stuff that you guys have different now? So Heather, you already touched on this being consumed last. So can you just share some of the issues you've had that maybe you can also ping with Holly here as a result of being consumed last? And your consume is also NF, so you have the specific flavor of consume there. So go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know so much that I can think through the flavor of it as much as I can notice like and that's really where the shame will reside for me, is probably more in my consume than necessarily my FI, because there's so many times when I haven't accounted for things and then they come up and bite me and I go, crap, I should have thought through that. I should have accounted for that. like I'm just seem to be so blind to it sometimes of taking in all of the information because I'm so quick to like, oh, I've got enough. Now I've gotten better over the years of like preparing and slowing down and trying to take in the information, but it's still painstaking for me to do so. So it's like my brain just can only scoop so much. And then I go, okay, I got to do something with this and I'll come back later and learn more about it. And that's kind of how I do. I just kind of learn, start it. And I've noticed that like recently I had to go back and redo, you know, notes that I had put in and treatment plans that I had put in. I go, oh God, dang it. Okay. Yeah, that's the way to do it. So I have to go back, you know, it takes so much longer to go, you know, the long way around to get something done because I don't consume enough probably. So even though I get started, sometimes I have to redo my efforts and then I get it down. I'm like, okay, that's what that means. But there's just this mental block that kind of rises up and I don't necessarily see around it. I don't realize that's what I'm going to need until it's there. I'm like, oh crap. So then I'm like, okay, now I've got it. But yeah, so there's a lot of times when I'll get caught on that consume last, that I didn't take the time. I didn't read the whole thing. I didn't whatever I was supposed to do. And then it catches me and I go, oh crap. So yeah, it happens not all the time. It's less than it used to be now that I'm kind of a grown up. But for sure, I still see it. I still notice it. And it doesn't matter how much I try to not make that, for that to not happen. It just seems like it's still, so I just play. I go, I'll just figure it out as like a honk, you know?
Yeah. Do you find that you rely on your play, because you do have that behavior to gather information from the tribe instead of doing it yourself?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So basically like the treatment planner, I'm like, I'm not going to figure that out. So I'm like, I'm going to buy a book and they've already written it all out. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. I'm just going to take what they have and go, oh, perfect. And tweak it a little bit. And I do that all the time. I'm not super quote creative. I'm artistic, but I'm not creative. So I tend to kind of go see what's out there and steal or just take from it. And then I may tweak it a little bit, but why would I need to do that? Somebody else has already figured it out.
Right. Now, in terms of consume, the specific flavors NF, which is purpose and meaning. We talked about this many times before. Is that something that you struggle with? Is like finding the meaning and purpose? I know you got a new gig, so maybe is that like going the right direction that you want?
Yeah, I feel like I'm much more, I think I've known, like I've had pockets of knowing, I feel like this is kind of my purpose, but I just didn't know quite how to get there. And so there's been moments in my life where it's like, okay, little things that have been said to me that I'm like, oh yeah. But a lot of times that's coming from the tribe that's seeing it. And then once I'm into it, then I'm like, oh, okay, this really feels right. This feels really good and right to me. Yeah.
And then the last thing before I pass it on to Holly is you being double activated ST blast. So that's like a superpower. Can you just talk about the pros of that, of having that, you know, as a superpower?
Yeah, I mean, it's super helpful in the sense of like when I have people now, because I think you and I have interviewed literally through my last 3 jobs. So when I was a trainer, it was super helpful to have ST Blast because I could take the material and flip it around and help people understand it in a very easy way. When I was, director, I was still doing a lot of psychoeducation. And so I could use it that way. And I could make sure that the systems, it's very systems oriented. And so now the therapies that I use tend to be now that I'm in private practice, are very systems oriented. And so even with that, when I go to explain things, when people call me and say, we talk about kind of what therapy might look like, I have that ability to really kind of say, this is what to expect. This is kind of what it would look like, and be able to explain it in a very articulate, quick way.
Right. And it's also double masculine. So it's going to be very confident,
Yes. I'm a good salesman.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Need some of that.
Yeah. Well, Holly, see, now on to you. Blast last, that's like your biggest problem here. Can you talk about some of the biggest problems you've had because of that blast last animal, ST as well?
I guess the biggest issue I have is just under communicating. I think I talked about this before in a previous interview. Like the TE, I'm able to get things done, but I sort of don't communicate what I'm doing with other people. And so therefore I can sort of do something that messes up what someone else is doing, or we end up doubling up on efforts because we're both doing the same thing and we haven't checked in with each other, and that creates problems. The other thing is, like, I work as a project manager, and I just don't really want to tell people what to do, and that's a big issue, because project managers, that's a big part of their job is telling people what to do, and like I can do it, but it just feels really weird and awkward to do. So yeah, so that's probably where I notice it the most, and it's just under communicating in general. It's been one of those things that has always come up in like my performance reviews at work. People saying to me, you need to communicate more, you need to check in more, you need to like have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, just to make sure everyone's okay and you're all on the same page, that kind of thing. So yeah.
It's just funny that your employer knows your blast also.
I feel like I have a question on that. Do you feel like, because like, when I was director of clinical, I felt okay, like putting all the organization, here's the calendars, here's the schedule, here's the whatever curriculum, all this kind of stuff. So I was okay as long as it was communicating a system, or this is how we're going to do it. But like, if it was like having to correct someone, or I would not be good at.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we would show that.
Yeah, I relate to that. Yeah, it's like creating meetings and things like that, organizing people is okay. But as soon as I have to tell someone they're wrong or they've done something wrong, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell those ISTPs they're wrong. Just kidding. Anyways, keep going.
And I was going to say that the other thing is like the feminine sensory. It really kicks my ass all the time because, like especially with the blast, like if I can't remember the details of what it is that I'm trying to explain, what I'm blasting, it's really, really hard to communicate that to someone, for them to follow it, for them to actually know what it is I want them to do. And I really struggle with that, just remembering details. It's it's horrible.
Do you find, so just like with Heather, so Heather uses play to kind of compensate for the consume last, because you can use play together, right? So for you, I'm gonna guess, do you feel like you use play to compensate for the blast? Because you can also talk to play, right?
Yeah. I honestly don't know what I'd do without play. I think I would be pretty stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, luckily you have it as like a first animal, so it's there.
Yeah.
So you can get away with a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like blast on training wheels, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I think like the play sort of feels more like a band-aid though, and I'm always kind of there's always like this concern that I'm going to be found out by my employer that I can't do the blast, and like after discovering OP and knowing that I'm blast last, I can't go into a job review and say, oh yeah, I can do more blast. I'm going to be really good at blasting, because I know like there are limits around like how much blast I can actually do and how good I can get at that. And so I can't really BS my way into saying that this is something that I can be really good at. So
your blast is your first to function though, so when you do get started, I guess you're okay.
Yeah, it's just when I get interrupted, that's where it just all falls apart.
Oh, right, that makes sense. You're super like EP-ish for an EJ, so
yeah, so like once I start something, I really have to stay and finish it, otherwise it's really hard to then get started again. And that's one of the things I actually struggle with working in like an open plan office environment where there's like lots of interruptions all the time, and I guess that's the main issue that I have between switching between the play and the blast, because like you need to do the play, and then when it comes to doing the blast, if I'm interrupted again, it's hard for me to get back into blast mode and do more.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, what about the superpower of your consume? Because you have consume, so that's the missing one for Heather here. You have double activated consume, and it's NF. So it's purpose and meaning. So is that something that you have more, or you are more in touch with, and something that you kind of found sooner, like your purpose and meaning and whatnot?
I wish I could say that I found my purpose. I'm still looking for it. And I think a lot of that has to do with just not having the alignment between the TE and the FI. it feels like there's always a really big disconnect between what I want and what I feel like I should do. And like the consume, I feel like I'm constantly consuming things that I'm hoping will help me figure out what my purpose is, but I always sort of default to the TE. So yeah, it hasn't helped me yet, but still trying.
Well, hopefully you have more pieces to kind of build the complete picture, you know, because it does take time to find your purpose. It's not like something that's going to happen overnight, right? So
yeah, and I think I sort of had to get to a point where like, especially with my job, like it's not the perfect fit for me or for my type, but it's something that I can work with and something that I can be okay with doing. So
what is the perfect fit then, long-term wise, would you say?
I actually have no idea. I have no idea. This is something that I've been sort of trying to work out, like what is the perfect fit for someone of my type? And like the officially type people are mostly actors, and acting is definitely not something that I want to go into. So
yeah, isn't it weird? There's so many ESTJ entertainers. It's
yeah. I mean, I guess like with the constant new and you know, changing environments and things, that is probably really appealing to someone of my type. And I've sort of noticed that in my career, I seem to be more drawn to fixed term contracts that I know are going to end after sort of a year to 2 years, so that I can then move on to something like still the same type of role, but just different work environment.
Oh yeah, I can totally relate with that. Like the fact there's like an end date is like, oh great. You know, some people said, oh no, I want long term, but you know, if you're an EP, the end date is like, it's like a blessing.
Yeah, but the thing is it starts to not look very good on your CV. Like if you've got all these sort of short-term roles, I mean, given they are fixed term, there's a reason why you left. But if you do that for an extended period of time, it doesn't look that good.
Are you a millennial?
Yes.
Okay, I think it's okay. I think it's like common now. So
yeah, I tend to struggle with that as well. Like if I look at my resume, there's lots of different experiences on there, mainly because I get bored as well. So if there's a lot of variety, I'm more open and willing to do that. But there has to be, I still have that compulsion of having to have the new. I don't know if it's to the same degree, but I mean, I you know, that was the nice, like the gig that I had where I was a trainer for 4 years was like the longest I had stayed doing any one thing, and I'm in my 50s. You know, but the great thing about it is though, is like, because in E, it's like all these possibilities, you're gaining all this experience. And so I'm using it all. It's not like I'm not using it all. And it's all still within the same box of pretty much kind of the mental health-ish, social work, you know, kind of box, but different roles.
I see that as well. Like you still, you're gathering experience, you're gathering skills, and you do use them. So it's not like it's completely useless. I mean, I look at it and I think this is good. Like I see it as it kind of proves that you can very quickly jump into a new role and just figure it out. So you're very easily able to adapt to a new situation. And I think that's a positive. But I also know that, you know, for sort of like I had a conversation with my current boss about it, and she said, yeah, it can be a bad look to have like all of these sort of short-term contracts on your resume if that's an ongoing thing, because then it kind of gives employers, especially if you're applying for a permanent role, it gives employers this sort of sense that you kind of have commitment issues. You don't want to stick at something long term, which I don't think is an unfair assessment for me when it comes to the workplace. So yeah,
that makes sense. Luckily, personality goes a long way. So if you talk to the employer and you have a good personality, I think they would bypass that. Because I got a new job now as a recruiter, so I've been hiring people, and I'm like, okay, someone can have a crappy resume, but if you talk to them on the phone and they're really well spoken and they're normal, I think normal now is like the thing. It seems like it goes a long way, just being normal, you know.
What is normal?
Like you're not weird, like, you know. I mean, there's good weird and bad weird. like good, like not bad weird.
And I wonder too, Holly, for you, if it's a little bit of the excitement of the new challenge. Like I just like, ooh,
Yeah.
a new challenge. And so I go, oh, I could go try that. That seems like a new challenge. Let me try that out. Because I just get
Yeah.
bored. It's like I've figured this out, which I haven't, because it's blast first and consume last. I've obviously not figured it out to the depth that it needs to be. But it's like, I figured it out enough. And so it's like, I'm bored. What's the next kind of thing to learn?
Yeah, I
Even though I'm low consume, I still like the new.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely relate to that. It's I think I mentioned this on my interview with you, Kendrick, that there's no desire, like being TNE, there's no desire to kind of learn something in depth, and same goes for the workplace. It's like as long as I've sort of got like a broad knowledge of everything, I'm happy. And once I get to that place, it's kind of like, okay, I need to move on. I need something new, even if it is, kind of similar. But yeah, it is, I see it as a challenge. It's like, okay, I've been here for 6 months and I feel like I've picked up a lot of what I need to know for my role. I'll give it, another year and a half, and then maybe I'll try something different.
Yeah. And I've seen that, like, because I'll listen to podcasts of these people who are, been doing therapy for 50 years and they've had this depth of knowledge. And like so envious. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
It's like so cool that somebody could like just build a lifetime of,
Yeah.
depth where it's like, wow, and there's parts of me that wish, like, there's definitely parts of me that regret not staying in certain things, but then there's parts like, yeah, but I wouldn't have had as much fun, and I've learned all this cool stuff and all these amazing experiences, and that I can kind of pull from, but I definitely regret a little bit. There's a little bit of regret, if not.
And also, like, I definitely know what you mean by the feeling, the regret of not staying and sticking at something and building on it. But do you also kind of look at these people and wonder whether they've sort of pigeonholed themselves into sort of one very sort of niche kind of area, and that makes them less able to adapt to other situations?
I don't know. I'll have to think. I don't know that I've ever had that thought. But a lot of times I'll do these interviews and then like a week later I go, oh, that's what they're talking about. Yeah, I have done that thought before. But like first I go, I don't know. I don't know that I've had that thought. Yeah, I don't know, because I don't really compare much on that realm. But I think I just more feel a bit of that regret and shame and the lack of consume for me.
Right.
And the lack of building when it comes to that. Yeah.
I think Dave and Chan discovered actually for people like us with like FISI, like what we're supposed to organize really, because it was they did a video with like 4 ENFPs, and they're like, well, what are you supposed to be doing? Because like people with NE and T, we want, everyone seems to want to bounce around, maybe except for the ESTJs. And it turns out it's supposed to be our identity, like the FISI. That's what we're supposed to build on, is our character and identity, which is kind of interesting. So
yes.
Yeah, so like now
like yes, I will build that. Yeah.
So now like I guess when it comes to us like looking for jobs, it's not about like, okay, what is the job? It's more like, how does this job build our identity? Because that's what we're building. It's kind of
and our experiences.
Yeah, and experience, of course. But like for example, if you have like FISI, like what are your values that you want to build up, right? So I think I asked you guys this before, but what are you guys' like values? If you have like a top 5 value that you want to build up, that you want to build up, essentially. I know you have feminine sensories, Holly, but
but like, what are my values?
Yeah,
I do know them. I just can't think of them right now.
You can use like the whole sentence if you have to. You don't need to put like the one word, because feminine sensory is fine. Don't worry.
Okay, I need to think on this.
Okay. What about you, Heather? Have you thought about this before? Like your values?
Yeah. I mean, I think about values quite a bit, morals, morality, values, things like that. Certainly in my profession as a counselor, I mean, I have a code of ethics that I follow. I value do no harm. I value, how can I be with this person the most non-judgmental, accepting, compassionate way, or, I value the things like connection with people. And so I definitely, but I think like, I also value self-growth, personal growth. If I don't, if I keep having something where it's hurting other people, or it's hurting my relationships, or it's whatever, or hurting even myself necessarily, I'm going to work and work and work and work and work, which is another value I have, is extremely strong work ethic, being responsible, being dependable. Those are all really strong values for me. And how can I build my character so that I'm, the best representation or potential of who I am, so that way I can be the greatest asset to the people in my life. And so I'm going to be constantly working. I'm just a constant work project on myself. And so that's, just value improving. I don't know, are those values?
Yeah, no, they were.
That's all FI to me.
Yeah, no, they were. Like you said, what was it? Compassion, connection, responsibility. Well, there was some other stuff that you said. Dependability. And there was one more that you said, I kind of forgot now. But so basically, when you work then, or get a job, you find that those are the values that you need to build up in you. Like,
well, yeah, and I'm thinking, but it's so, I'm thinking in terms, obviously, of the other person. So I'm thinking, like, if I'm an employee, I want to be an employee where that boss feels blessed to have me as an employee, that it's not difficult, that I walk away from that job and I've done the best I can, and I've left that environment better than when I came to it. Like, it's those kind of things that drive me, that even though, to me, I just call it integrity, but even though, maybe I'm frustrated with something, I'm still going to do the best job I can because I value that. It doesn't matter what the external is going on. I can't live with myself if I don't do a good job, at least to the best of my standard and ability. So I have those kind of values.
Oh, there we go.
Really drive me. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So integrity is the fifth one then. But yeah, that was good actually. Yeah. I think about that too myself. Like, like my value is freedom, obviously, as an EP, courage, authenticity, growth, and honesty. So like when I go to work and stuff, I was like, okay, am I using those 5 values? Like, am I growing those 5 values? If I don't feel like courage is a big one. Like, if I don't feel like I'm scared, like I'm like when I'm doing something, there's no like fear or anything, I'm in the wrong place. Like, I need like my skin, like there's some like, is that the right word? You need to put some skin in the game or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There has to be a part of it.
It means you care.
What's that?
It means you care about it. If there's a little bit of fear, it usually typically kind of indicates it's like, okay, I've got skin in the game. I actually care about this, or you wouldn't.
Yeah, I need to feel like I can get rejected. If I don't have that, it's a terrible job. Like, I need to feel like, there should be like me getting rejected or getting my feelings hurt. I know it's weird, but yeah. But anyhow, Holly, do you have your own version of like what the stuff in header I've been talking about?
I do. I don't know if I can think of 5.
That's not really 5. What's yours?
Okay. Well, obviously freedom was one of them. I think this is really annoying because I actually thought about this maybe a year ago about what I actually value. And I think like a good way to look at it is what are you spending your time doing? Because that indicates what you actually value, not what you want to value, but what you actually value. And personal growth is definitely one of the big things, probably the biggest thing that I value the most, because I feel like I'm constantly trying to improve myself in various different ways, and OP has definitely helped sort of highlight my weaknesses, not the ones that I think I'm good at and things I'm not good at, things I'm actually not good at, and work on those and try to improve myself. And so that is something that I sort of seek out in other people, in friends and partners and things like that. Are they growth minded? Is this something that they value, something that they are, constantly pushing themselves to do? So that is a big one for me. And then obviously, connection, being FI, connection. I mean, everyone wants connection, but connection is a big one. Authenticity is something that Authenticity is one of those things that I value, but I don't always do.
Yeah.
So this is one of these things that, because, and I think this is probably more of a Demon FI problem, there's the me that I see, and then there's the me that I project to the world, and those are not in alignment always. So I feel like there's different versions of myself that people see, and that has been something that's kind of bothered me for quite a while, and something that I've been wanting to work on, and have been sort of slowly trying to work on, trying to build up that identity and feel more comfortable with sort of expressing that to the world.
Question on that. Do you feel like, I'll see if I can articulate this well, because we're talking about FI and that's where I really should go to class. Do you feel like part of it's like, I don't have to necessarily be authentic because I feel like, okay, as an EJ, here's this person looking for something from me, or at least I'm projecting that maybe. And so I'm going to tailor whatever I am, almost like a chameleon, to, oh, they need this or they need that, because I'm vibing that or sensing that, or, could be wrong, but maybe I'm going to tailor that. So I don't necessarily have to show up as quote me, but even though I'm trying to get better about doing that and being more authentic. Does that make sense at all? Does that resonate?
Yeah, 100%. But that has always gotten me into trouble with relationships, especially because I sort of tailor this version of myself to suit the other person. But it's something that is difficult for me to maintain in the long run, because then I sort of stack the negative FI and then blow up on them, and they go, what's the problem? Like, I thought everything was fine. What do you mean you didn't want to be this way? So yeah, that's where it's an issue. And it, like, had I been sort of more comfortable with showing up as myself to a certain degree, then I wouldn't have these problems. Yeah. But I think as a DE, there's always going to be that need to kind of be what the other person needs you to be. So you just got to have that balance.
Yeah.
I guess getting from your laugh, Heather, that you resonated really deeply to what Holly said.
Every tidal wave ever, which I'm older than her, so I've had many more.
Yeah.
I guess Holly has a bunch more coming her way than that's what I mean.
Right. Can't wait.
That's the great thing. She's figured this out younger than I did. So, I didn't have quite the insight.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the OPS code does shortcut things, you can shave off like a few years of
years of pain and torture.
Yeah. Guess
at
what?
least you know what you're doing. At least you're doing it aware. It's like, oh, okay, I know what this is. I'm having a tidal wave right now, and I'm just gonna roll with it.
Yeah. That's true, actually. Yeah, because now we have awareness for tidal waves. Like a few days ago, I was doing data entry. That's SI work, and I'm like, I hate SI, and I was getting a tidal wave. I was freaking out, but I knew I was freaking out too. So because of OPS, right? Like, I knew what was happening. I knew it was a tidal wave. And I was just telling myself, no, Kendrick, this is SI training. I just kept repeating that to myself as I was freaking out,
Yeah,
So,
it's just mindfulness. That's the amazing thing about the human brain, is we have the ability to watch ourselves and to observe ourselves. And really what OPS is doing is just bringing about greater mindfulness. Because when we can just see it now, so we see the part, we see this or that, which is really nice, because then we can actually, our actual true self can connect to some of these parts and in a little bit better understanding way than it just, being subconsciously driven and just grabbing the wheel or and taking us off completely, at least. Yeah.
And I guess you could always say, like, if you're having your tidal wave, it's like just FI training, that's what it is. It's like a boot camp, like an FI boot camp.
Yeah.
So since we're on topic of FI, can you guys share FI being a triggering function for you? And what does that look like? Because I feel like it's like the worst possible thing to be as like your fourth function. I have SI fourth, but I think compared to people that has like TI at the bottom or FI at the bottom, I'm like, that's horrible. No offense to you guys, because that's your identity. Your identity is your triggering function. Oh my God, that's horrible. Like, I don't even know, like, how you're supposed to cope with that. So how do you guys deal with that, knowing that your identity is your triggering function? Like you being you is what triggers you. It's kind of weird,
Yeah, I think there's just always like this fear that you're going to be rejected, that if you kind of present who you are and what you like to the world, that someone's going to go, oh, I don't like that. I don't like you. And there's I guess also a fear that, and this is something that I feel, that I'm a bad person in some way, that and this comes from like when I do kind of put my own needs above someone else's and they don't like it, my sort of tidal wave is, oh my God, I'm a bad person. I'm a horrible person. And that is something that that I've sort of had to kind of like retrain my brain. So when I still by default kind of have these reactions, but I have to sort of retrain my brain and go, no, this is just a tidal wave. It's fine. You can work through this, and you're allowed to put your needs above someone else's sometimes, within reason as well. Yeah.
What about you, Heather?
Yeah, that's really well said. I wrote that down. Yeah. I mean, I think that I agree with you in the sense of, and it depends on who the person is. Cause some people I'm okay to be a little bit more, I feel more safe with, but if it's someone I don't know very well, or it just, how TI will say, I feel stupid. Well, I feel like that too. I get embarrassed and then, that was stupid. Why did I say that? Why did I do it that way? But definitely I like kind of how you put that about FI feeling, it's almost like it's just embarrassed about liking what you like, or I thought this was cute, and so I threw something out there. I thought that was funny, and then you get rejected, which apparently Kendrick's okay with. But every EJ is like, what? Why are you okay? But yeah, get rejected or don't, get ghosted, don't hear back. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it's this immediate hit of kind of shame in there of, and so I've had to definitely work through being okay. And what the thing about it is, it's because in that moment, there's a difference between being self-centered, where I feel like I'm centering on me and I'm learning about me and I'm coming from a healthy place, versus being selfish. And usually if I'm selfish, it's coming from my toddler brain. So what I call it, it's coming from a really young, part of me that's flipping out. And so I don't see clearly. So rather than giving reasons that are more benevolent, or, maybe they were just uncomfortable, or they didn't quite this or quite that, it just goes to worst case, exactly what you're saying. There's something really wrong with me, or this and that. So I've had to learn to undo that self-talk, to say, no, that may not be it. Maybe it has nothing to do with you, and kind of undo that. But it's always like a mental gymnastics, and it's a visceral body reaction first. And then it takes a while to kind of sift through that. So I'm getting better and better at it. Like I'm getting quicker at not getting so triggered in it. The more experience I have, in it, not being triggered in it.
Yeah.
There's a book I read long time ago now. It's called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. It's probably one of the best books.
I've got that on my bookshelf.
Yeah. Have you read
I
that?
haven't read it yet though.
No. Okay. Yeah. That's in my opinion, like, if you have FI, I think that's like one of the top 3 books you need to read. It's so good.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Yeah. And they have an audiobook version if you don't want to read also. Anyways, but anyways, like I relate to what a lot of you guys were saying. Is like, oh, there's like the fear of rejection. I never felt like I was a bad person if I asserted my needs, but I just felt insecure to assert my needs, to like let people know what my FI is. So it was an insecurity rather than me thinking I'm a bad person. But I read that book, and in the book it said that, oh, you don't need to do a good job. It's like you need just do 1% better than before. So I kind of play this game. It's like exposure therapy. So I'm like, okay, what will happen if I get rejected? What happens on the opposite side of that? Because like you think about like the pain, right? But you don't think about what happens after the pain, right? So for me, like I got a job in fitness, doing 100% sales. So if I don't sell anything, then I don't get paid to pay my rent or have food on the table. And I always made sure I kind of played a game with myself. It was horrible. Like the person I'm talking to during those consultations, when I'm trying to sell them like personal training or whatever, I have to hear them say, no, I don't want to hire you. and I needed to get that direct hit. That's kind of like how I felt about it. And it was kind of weird because it did hurt when they said no. But on the opposite side of that mountain, it was like that from that book, the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. It was like, no, you did 1% better because you did something for yourself. You know, like you asserted yourself. And then I think after doing it so many times, it's like I'm still insecure, but I will now do it. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like, yes, I will still feel scared. I will still feel insecure, but I will do it. So
Yeah.
the fear never goes away and the insecurity never goes away, but the action will now be there. So it's,
Yeah.
and it gives you like a little bit of sense of self-respect, I think. And I think that's the best word. Because like now, you know, no matter how bad it feels, you can do it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea too of kind of looking over at the growth that you have made, because we just don't tend to see it. We don't tend to notice it, and stopping and really kind of noticing that growth. It's interesting too. And I'm going to toss something out there because I have no problem with TE doing this. And I'm going to NT play. You ready? It's interesting because it almost, I hear the observers seem to talk more about insecurity. I don't tend to think in terms of insecurity. I don't know if maybe the single deciders do that, but I think more like what you were saying, Holly, if whether I'm good or bad or whatever. I just wonder I wonder if the observers think more in terms of that, or if that's, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've seen a trend where the deciders tend to focus on good or bad, as are you a good or bad person?
Right.
I don't know, Kendra, you can speak for the observers, but yeah, I've definitely seen the deciders focus on that.
Well, I'm curious though, because Holly, you have double activated consume.
Yes.
I interviewed someone earlier who was an ESFJ, and she seems to double decide in a rudimentary way because of the consume.
Okay.
Because she can see herself, because it was an external self-awareness. So if that tribe does something, or whenever there's like something that needs to, you need to make a judgment call, whether it's bad or good, right? The fact that you can look at the tribe and then yourself after, then it kind of makes it okay, because then you kind of you cut the tribe some slack. You can't call them bad because you can look at yourself and you've also done bad things yourself, So that's kind of like a rudimentary double deciding. It seems like the high consume EJs have some access to this. So I don't know if you do with like that double activated consume, because you can see yourself from a third person perspective, or is it still something that's difficult?
It really honestly really depends on what it is. I do see myself double deciding, but I don't know if I actually believe the double deciding that I do. So like I do it, but then it always comes back to it's my fault, or like I've done something bad, something wrong. This person hates me because there's something I've done. So it's like the double decide. I don't end on double deciding. I still end on single deciding.
Is it because of feminine FI?
I think so, and and it's, even though it's double activated, it's still last. I'm still not looking there as much as I should.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that seems to be the downside of feminine FI, but I'm now seeing people with masculine FI. There's like some benefits too. I don't know if you guys can relate. So let me just ask you guys, okay? When you feel bad, does it retain inside, or does it also go as fast as when it hits you? You guys, because you both have feminine FI. Like when negative emotion comes, does it also leave as quickly? You don't hold on to it?
I mean, I don't. Well, okay, it depends on what it is, but I would say that I don't hold on to it, but that's usually because I'm trying to avoid feeling it in the first place.
Okay, I see.
So it's not that I quickly process it and then let it go. It's because I'm like, no, I don't want to deal with this. I'm just gonna put it away and save it for later, and I never come back to later. So.
But do you remember it later because it's feminine FI? Will you remember the feeling?
Certain things, yes, but I would say for the most part, no, I don't remember what it feels like. And that's why I would keep repeating certain mistakes with people, because I wouldn't remember what the feeling was like in order to avoid it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's weird. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing now. It's like,
I think it's a bad thing.
because you
Wonder-
forgot.
Can't learn from it.
I wonder if that's, I'm almost wondering, because I remember, I'm almost wondering if that's the feminine SI, not remembering the experience.
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
because,
right.
yeah, because with masculine SI, I remember, especially if music, because it's audio. I mean, music will pull me to memories from a decade or 2 or 3 ago. I mean, it will pull me right there. But yeah, so I wonder, I mean, does that,
I think it might be like because I have double feminine sleep, and I think that plays a really big part in it. Like there are certain things that I remember that, you know, will be particularly traumatic for me, but for the most part, I don't remember how something made me feel. And so I often find that I am repeating these things because I just don't have that memory of it in order to remind me not to go back there.
yeah, that's interesting, because to me, it's always a familiar feeling. It's like, oh, I've been here before. I've felt this before. You know?
Okay.
And so, and I don't like it. And I agree with you. I don't like, but so lately I've been better though about just like if I'm trying to grieve something, I'm trying to be a lot better about grieving things, because I'm very okay with fear. I'm very okay with anger, like those two, you know, but like anything in the sad realm, it just sucks and I don't like it. So I'm trying to be a lot better about just kind of sinking into sadness and grieving and just allowing it to, and just staying in that emotion and allowing it to be there. And it's amazing how it's just isn't as scary when I allow myself to actually just feel that grief and that sadness of whatever, you know, is going on for me. But that's only been as of recent. And normally I would do exactly what you're talking about. It's like, you know, and I just, what do I need to do to get out of this emotion? Let me figure this out.
Yeah.
Let me get out of this emotion. So I'm trying to be better about just experiencing emotions and just being there. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a question for both of you guys based on what you guys said, because
Okay.
it's interesting for me as an observer, even though I have the same function as you guys. There's like a lot of difference still, so I'm very curious. So for Heather, what I'm curious about is, why would you push away sadness? Because for me, like, if there's something sad, I actually want to feel sad. It's weird, like, but I want to feel the sadness, you know. So so I'm curious. But then for Holly, you're visual, right? So do you get sucked into those feelings if you see like an image of something that reminds you of something that made you feel, or is it completely gone? There's nothing.
Oh, Heather, you go first. Sorry.
No, oh, dang, I was gonna say you go first.
Okay.
It's like you go first. You go first.
No, okay, I can go first. I kind of wrote something down because it struck me, unless you want to go, Holly.
No, I need a little more time to think about it.
Okay.
Okay, have time to think, because sometimes it's like if something comes to you and it's like, oh, if I don't say it right now, I'll forget it. So,
Oh yeah.
but I have feminine in, so it's like that's quicker for me. I think part of it is why I don't like sadness and I don't like grieving is because it crashes in on double feminine NF. It's like I have this idealistic part of me, and I don't want to deal with the reality. I don't want to see, I mean, even though I'm beholden to it in the sense of having, you know, the masculine SI, I would prefer to keep my idealistic fairy, you know, rose-colored glasses on. I prefer that. And so because to me, that's when sadness comes, is when reality hits and it's like, oh, I'm going to need to grieve this. This wasn't what I expected. This wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Because in E, you know, with masculine SI, the sensory is very limited for me. And so I just tend like, oh, okay, I'll live with it. I'll manage it. I'll move around it, whatever. But like to actually have to face, no, this is what reality is, can be difficult for me. And so, you know, I kind of just have to, and that's what processing it looks like for me, is actually accepting what it was and in grieving it and just being sad about it. And that's okay. I don't know if that made any sense at all, or if what you were looking for, Kendrick.
Oh, I wasn't looking for anything specifically.
Okay.
I wanted to get your perspective. But
Okay.
I think your double feminine NF consume, that makes sense to me, because I don't think anyone has ever described double feminine NF consume, and also last in that way. So I thought that was interesting that you said that. Like
Extremely idealistic.
I guess you have a preferred vibe, but and if that gets wrecked, you know, and because it's fourth, it's very small, right? So then you don't want anyone to wreck it, because you don't know what else you would do otherwise. And that's just my interpretation. I don't know if that's right or not. What about you, Holly?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I know this is going to sound really, really weird, but so what your question about being visual and whether visual reminders kind of set me off with the negative emotions. They do, and I've noticed that. So I've had this this pattern of whenever something goes wrong, like something that causes negative emotion in my life, I have this need to kind of make myself over in some way. So like I'll change my physical appearance somehow, I'll change where I live, like I'll move out of my house and into another house. Like my physical environment needs to change, and then so does my identity in a way needs to change, because it's like staying the way that I was will serve as a constant reminder of this negative experience that I had. So that was something that I kind of sort of in the last maybe 6 months realized that this is something that I keep doing over and over again.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not healthy and it's not helpful. So
that's super interesting though. I didn't know that's like it sounds like it's a visual thing. Like you change.
I mean, I can only assume that it is, but I haven't spoken to any other visuals about this, so I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking about like your ENTJ cousins, you know, for example, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, he's FM, and he's like, he changes identity too, right? Like he started off as like the bodybuilder guy, and then became the actor, and then he became the politician, you know? So
yeah. But I mean, was that as a result of something major happening in his life?
I think the good thing about him that makes him like super growth mindset is he planned it, you know, like it was planned. Like he chose his identity. I think that's like the superpower of feminine DI. It's like you can choose who you want to be, you know, because if you're masculine DI, it's like, oh, I know who I am. But feminine DI is like, you don't know who you are, but you can choose who you want to be. So it's kind of cool in that sense, you know. So
growing up in the military, kind of in a military family, moved all the time. So the SI and S was constantly changing for me every 2 to 3 years anyway, you know, and so it was kind of exciting. It's like, oh, okay, I get to start over again. Yeah, I get to start over again, and with a whole new, you know, and then inevitably I still bring me to the party. So it's like, you know, I'm still doing it. So, but I get you with that idea of, you know, starting over and being able to kind of recreate. And sometimes I'll feel like that. I'll have kind of this mindset of, oh, I wish I could go back and start over again.
Yeah.
And get it right, quote, right this time, or get it a certain way this time, because SI is so rear view minded.
Yep.
So rear view minded. And so, but so I kind of resonate. Wait, what was that you're saying too? Yeah.
Oh, good. It wasn't that weird.
No.
As I was thinking it through, I was like, this is going to sound crazy.
Yeah, but I've gotten better about, you know, kind of staying in things and, you know, but it's, kind of, I mean, there's some things that I have a lot of stability. I mean, I've been married for 32 years, and, you know, we've been in this community for a certain amount of time. And so I learned just by being in places how to, you know, to work through things. But yeah, it's very tempting, like, oh, things screwed up. Okay, let me pop up. Let me just move and start all over again.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's very interesting how you guys are talking about starting again. That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Changing your identity.
Yeah. It must be a feminine FI thing, because I was thinking about that, and I'm like, because if I move somewhere to start again, it wouldn't be because of the identity stuff. It's just because I'm an EP. I just want change, you know.
Just want new.
Yeah. So, but for you guys, it seems to be like your identity is attached to it, which kind of
It's almost like we tainted something, or just feels like whatever this is here is kind of like.
Yeah, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
Because especially if it's decider related stuff, it's a big deal, and your only option is to move away and start new.
So right. It's new people then? You want new people instead of like.
For me, it's often new people. Yeah. Because I just don't see it as something that can be resolved.
Yeah, it's something that I've had to, because we've stayed in a particular community for so long. It's in different community Dave and my husband and I have been in, where it's like I haven't had a choice. I've had to like work through things. But it's always that, yeah, I get it. It's kind of that temptation of let's just redo. Yep, redo, and I'll do it better this time. And it's and you kind of get it better that time because you've learned. But it's definitely tied to the decidery thing for sure. I would agree. I would always think like, I wonder like with an observer, if it'd be like, let me just scrap the whole, let me scrap the whole book and I'll just start over anew. Crumple it up and throw it away and just start writing. I don't know.
That
makes sense, Kendrick?
Well, no, not really, but I read a book before that said that if you want someone to change, your perception of them has to change first, because then your perception of them is how you treat them, and it's vice versa too. Like if you want someone to treat you differently, then their perception of you has to change first. Otherwise, they're going to treat you the same way. And if you try to change, but their perception of you hasn't changed, they're going to try to push you back to what they perceive you as. That's why I think what you're saying makes perfect sense. That if you move to a new community, you have a fresh start, because their people don't have any perception of you yet, so you can kind of recreate who you are because there's no perception yet. So it's a blank canvas. But obviously over time, people start creating a perception of you, and and then it's the same pattern again, right? So unless you go ahead.
I was gonna say it's also interesting, like how much you project onto other people what you think their perception is of you, because I obviously see myself in a certain way, and some of that might be accurate and some of it might be wildly inaccurate. And like through talking to other people, I find that they actually see me sometimes very differently to how I see myself. And so it's like if you're trying to change someone else's perception of you, it makes it kind of difficult if their perception and your perception of yourself don't align.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I did a test once because I saw this thing online that said like, oh, if you want to grow, you should ask people what your strengths or weaknesses are and get their opinion on it. So because it's gonna be different from what you think it is, right? But as long as you're careful, because sometimes they tell you what your weakness is, but it's not because they're trying to help you, but they're trying to help themselves. So you have to be careful with that. So
sometimes they might only tell you what you want to hear as well, or what they think you want to hear.
Well, some people, they tippy toe, so they're like, oh, are you sure you want me to tell you? But yeah, no, it's good. I did it before. It was good. Like people gave me feedback, right? And I'm like, oh, cool. I have something to work with, Like, I mean, I wasn't surprised, but some of the stuff people said, they're like, oh, you're unrealistic. I'm like, yeah, I'm NE, makes sense. Yeah. All right. So for the last part, I want you guys to ask each other questions about each other that you want to learn, either for your own personal growth, because you guys have each other's superpowers, like Heather, you have the ST, Holly, you have the NF consume, so what questions would you have for each other in terms of like either learning more about your type or personal growth or whatnot? I'm gonna go get Holly to ask the question first, because Holly, you're the lead consume here. So
okay. Well, I guess my question is going to be focused around blast, because that is the one thing I need to do better at. Well, okay, no, it's not the only thing, but it's one of the things I need to do better at. So I guess my question for you is, how would you recommend for someone with blast to just get started? Like, don't feel like you need to keep consuming in order to make sure you know absolutely everything before you then get started, and especially when it comes to talking to other people, like presenting yourself to other people. How would you recommend that you just do that?
Just get started.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious, it just it's like I can't help but do it. So I'm like, okay, how do I do that? I think, you know, I wonder if when you get excited about something and just kind of going with that generated excitement, that kind of comes with the energy. I don't know if you feel that way. Like, do you get an energy or an excitement that comes with something that's kind of new?
Yes.
So what happens after that then? Is it that you don't roll with that excitement, or do you stop it, or?
I mean, often if it's something that I'm excited about, then I need to start it now. Like, I need to go and do it now. But it really depends on what it is. Like, if I mostly experience this at work. Like, if it's a work-related thing where I need to go into a meeting, I need to sort of run this meeting and tell people what they need to be doing. That's where I get a lot of anxiety. And I find that I spend too much time over preparing for these specific interactions with people, because I don't want to say something wrong. I don't want to embarrass myself. And I also, just don't want to look like an idiot.
Yeah, but that is blast. I mean, I think the preparing is kind of part of the blast nature of it, is kind of preparing and having anything ready so that way you have knowledgeable things that you say. Is it more that it's the fear of the reaction of the people? Because to me that sounds like you're actually doing the blast.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely more the reactions of, possibly me not knowing what I'm talking about, or at least because I've got this thing around not being clear. And when I'm communicating with other people, I'm just worried that they're not actually understanding what I'm saying. And so it's going to be like a negative reaction from them, just not understanding what I'm trying to communicate to them.
Yeah, I gotcha. So, I mean, my only thought in that would just be to be garnering that feedback, and just looking and saying, and literally asking them, hey, what did you just understand of what I just said? What you take away? Is this clear? Is kind of getting that feedback to see if it was clear or not, and just being like, oh, okay, maybe I need to, how can I better communicate them? So making, in that situation, that's the thing that came to mind for me.
Okay. Yep. I have noticed that the blasters do that. They're sort of relaying back what someone else has said in order to make sure that they understand it as well. But also making sure that other people understand what they have said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, almost like probably an annoying degree. We're like, yeah, we got it the first time.
Yeah, that's double activated blast. Yeah. I think like blast play and play blast are also very different. So I think, Holly, your version of blast will be like more play blast,
Probably, yeah.
And then Heather, what question would you have for Holly?
Well, I mean, I think the flip opposite. How do you go about not just running headfirst into things? What does consume look like, as far as, how do you reel things in and actually, what do you do to make sure? Because I have to prepare, but inevitably I feel like my brain is not, I feel like I can only take in so much, and then I got to do it, and then I can take in more and do it. So it sounds like your brain doesn't necessarily have that going on for you.
I think the feminine sensory means kind of makes it difficult to retain the stuff that I do consume. So I have to write it down, and I'm constantly sort of going back over the stuff that I've consumed just to make sure that I've actually got it right before I then go and blast. But I mean, my consume's double activated, so it's what I want to be doing the most, and it's what I feel sort of safe and happy doing. The difficulty is then sort of going out and actually communicating it to other people. But I guess the thing is that you don't really know whether you've understood what you've consumed until you then go and blast it. So I mean, I guess I guess it's kind of difficult because I always thought that preparing was consume as well. I always saw that because I'm constantly preparing for things because I don't feel comfortable to do the blast until I've prepared, and I thought that was consume.
It's probably sleep.
Oh, probably is sleep.
Yeah, because you're going over your known information, right? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prepare because I can't, because I'm always afraid I can't anticipate. So if I can't anticipate with the lack of the in, then let me gather let me at least have all these different things so that way it's like, oh, okay, now I can, at least maybe something in this pile of things right here will actually meet whatever the need is at that moment. So but I always thought maybe that was consume, but I guess not.
Yeah.
Well,
you both have sleep third, so I can see you
Yeah.
both. Yeah, you're both doing it. So it's like it's like the final check before you blast is to go to sleep first. Like, oh, let me double check first. Your known information.
Yeah, that does. Like for me, it's like is what I'm about to blast going to make sense to people? Like, have I narrowed it down enough that I can explain it clearly to someone else and that they can actually do something with it? Because if I don't do that, like it's just a massive jumble of information in my head, and it's really hard to explain what I'm actually thinking.
That may be the difference, because I typically have it organized in my head before it comes out. Like I've already boiled it down. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't do that. Mine's just like a massive soup of consume in my head. And I can make it all relate to one another, but it's just trying to explain that, and that's one of the things that gets me. If someone asks me a question that I'm not prepared for, it's like, where do I start? How do I start explaining this? Like the information's in there, but it's like I can't find the thread to pull on to actually start explaining what's in there.
Yeah, you can use copy what the INTJs do, like they have the same answer for all the questions because they have like like in their NI, all the sensory gets shoved in the NI, and they have like a go-to answer for all the questions.
I think NI is great for that.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, ours is SIT, so it's a little bit tougher because it's specific, right? For NI, you can just generalize everything. It's like, yeah, it also means this. Oh yeah, it also means that. And you're like, no, it doesn't. Your NE will be like, no, it doesn't. But
yeah,
like, no, trust me, it does. So, okay. So we'll wrap up the interview here. So, thanks to both of you for coming out and sharing more about your superpowers as ESTJs, and as well as areas that you have issues with, like FI. So I think it's gonna help a lot of people who with FI at the bottom to see that, oh, I'm not the only one that has problem with FI. Like a lot of fellow ESTJs or ENTJs also have this issue. And I think also it was interesting to see that both of you have the NE. So there's a part of you that want to skip and like try something new. Even Heather, who's like OI, but you'll play second, right? So there's like that EP part of you with the tribe specifically. Yeah. All right. Oh, bye everyone.
bye.